Reached the two dots on in the Gomorrah. We reached the two dots on the top of Pei and Aleph, but we haven't yet read the Rashi. Just to summarize, we said who gets the Chavala payments if a third party injures a Bas Ketana, a minor girl. We were discussing Rav, who says that for the most part it goes to the girl. Reish Lakish agrees it goes to the girl. Rabbi Yochanan, 2 lines from the bottom, says it all goes to the father. Afilu pitzia, not only loss of wages, but even restitution for the wound itself. And we said that includes both nezek, loss in value, and pitzia befoneha, a wound on the face. Even though it's not debilitating, it is a loss in value. It falls into the category of nezek. Let's keep those definitions in mind. What I want to do first is catch up in Rashi, and then maybe we'll see a little bit of Tosfos today. All right, what Rashi we were up to? Let's begin with La'avua boy lemeis vele. It's about 10 lines from the bottom of Rashi on page Zayin Amud Bet. Everybody with us?
10 lines.
Page Zayin Amud Bet, 10 lines from the bottom of Rashi.
10 lines from the bottom of Rashi. So it's 10 lines from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. Oh, dear.
That very line. Rashi begins La'avua boy lemeis vele.
All right. And that's where in the Gomorrah?
Good question. Let's locate that.
Bava. What's the English translation of that?
He should give it to the father. I think where it is on the 5th line, on the fifth medium line, the 5th wider line. It says, our Gemara says, Avihem boy lemeisve.
1, 2, 3.
The Gemara's question was on the second Braita, which we established as a case of smuchan al shulchano, where the children are dependent on the parents' table. We said that the third party that injures them. So and for a minor, they put it in a trust fund. The question is why? And if they're dependent on their father's table, they should give it to the father. Let me pull up the chart that we had yesterday.
It's on 87B2, the last line on the page.
Oh, right.
Here's the chart again. We established Brisa number 2. We established Brisa number 2 as the case when the children are dependent on the father's table. And in this top line on the chart, it says if the child is injured by the father, then the father is exempt from paying because the payment should go to him. So the Gemara asks, if so, a third party should pay to the father. After all, the father is paying for their food. How come the halacha is, according to this brisa, that a third party would pay the child or set up a trust for the child? All right, now we're ready to jump into Rashi. Le'avua boy lemeis vole. Rashi comments, D'maishna, for what is the difference? Ki chavel behu ihu. If he himself injures them, he referring to the father, right? The word ihu is the same as who, means he. Demiftar misheves. Again, we're speaking within Rav, and the only thing the only thing the father would ever be liable for is sheves. In this case, the father is exempt from paying sheves, mishum dismuchen al shulchano, because we're talking about a case that the children are dependent upon the father's table. And therefore he's exempt because he doesn't have to pay himself. But now you're telling me that, jumping back into Rashi, ki chavli behu acharini, if other people do a chavola on them, injure the children, that they should pay the children, nami leis bule. Let it be that nami, that also they should give it to him, they should give it to the father.
Could you repeat that, please?
Sure. Take a look at the chart that I just brought up on the screen of Brisa number 2. If the children are injured by the father, on the top line of that chart here, that second chart, Brisa number 2, injured by the father, across the board, the father is exempt from paying to his children. And the Gomorrah explains, I'm looking at this box, the Gomorrah explains, when dependent on the father's table. Because the children are dependent on the father's table, the father is exempt from paying his children. That means the payment should come to him. The father says, if I'm paying for your food, I can collect any payments for your lost work. The question develops, the Gemara's question is about the second line. What if the children are injured by a third party? There the Brisa says, pay the child. To an adult, pay immediately. To a minor, pay to a trust. But why? We said if the father is supporting his children at his table, the payment should go to him and should go to the father. All right, let's go to the next Rashi. This is from the answer of the Gemara. B'midi dechoser be mamona. What is he choser? He's losing money. When do we say that the father is makpid? He's makpid on his children's finances when he has to feed them. When he has to lose money out of his pocket. Kigon, Rashi continues, Kigon, such as, if he himself injured his child, in order to pay them would mean money out of his pocket. The name of Anon means we, that we Beis Din should say to him, Zil Shlim, go and pay. That the father is not willing to do. But money that comes me'alma, money that comes from a third party, that he will be willing to allow his child to have. Let's go on to the next Rashi. It's a little hard to keep track in the Rashis. We saw this Gemara yesterday, but we'll try our best. The Gemara then asks about a mitzvah. The Gemara says in Bava mitzvah that if a child finds a lost object, that object belongs to the father. You know what? Let me pull up that Gemara. One moment. Let me pull up that Gemara as well. All right, I now pulled up a screen. Hope you can see it.
What daf is that?
What?
What daf in Bava Metzia?
It says here, Bava Metzia daf Yud Beis Amud Beis. Rashi is about to quote a Mishnah, and I just brought up on the screen a quote from that Gemara. If you see the Mishnah itself is on Yud Beis. It says here Yud Beis. The Mishnah is on Yud Beis Amud Aleph in Bava Metzia. This is the if you're following on the screen, it's the first section here. So this is introduction before we see the Rashi. The Mishnah says over there in Bava Metzia, Metzias beno uvito aktanim, Metzias avdo v'shivchoso aknanim, and Metzias ishto hare elu shalo. Any hefker lost object that is found by one's minor son or minor daughter, one's eved or shivcha knanis, or one's wife, hare elu shalo, they belong to him. if a minor child finds a lost object that belongs to the father. Now, let's see a little bit in the Gemara there, because that will help us with the Tosfos in a few minutes. All right, at the beginning of the Gemara, over there in Bava Metzia Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph, I'm putting number 1 here, right? So Gemara number 1, and there are 2 opinions why this should be. The first opinion is Amar Shmuel, Mipnei ma amru Metzias Katan la'aviv, shebesha'a shemotza'a meritza etzel aviv, ve'eno me'acher biyado. When the Gemara says katan, it means katan. It means a small child under Barabas mitzvah. And why does it belong to the father? Because that's a child's nature. When they find a $20 bill on the street, the moment they find it, he immediately runs and shows the parents, look what I found. And he gives it to the parents. He doesn't keep it in his pocket. So immediately it belongs to the parents. Once again, according to Shmuel, a katan means a katan, less than 13, or a girl less than 12. And a gadol, an adult, who has a little bit more of a sense of what he can do with the $20 bill, would not do so. He would not immediately run it to the parents. He would keep it for himself. There's a second opinion in the Gemara that I marked here with the number 2, and Yud Beis Amud Beis in Bava Metzia, towards the top. Ufligo de Rabbi Chia bar Abba. This is the section marked with the number 2. Shmuel is at odds. He argues with Rabbi Chia bar Abba. The Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Now we just turned the page onto Yud Beis Amud Beis. Lo gadol mamush. In our Mishnah, an adult does not mean an adult. V'lo katan mamush. Nor does a minor necessarily mean a minor. Elo, rather, gadol v'samuch al shulchan aviv zehu katan. An adult, but he is still reliant upon his father's table, is defined as a katan, and therefore a lost object that he finds would belong to the father. Whereas katan ve'eno samech al shulchan aviv zehu gadol, even a minor in terms of age, if he's not at his father's table, he's considered a gadol, and if he finds a lost object, he would keep it. Now it's important to note, one last point, our sugya is according to Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Our sugya clearly makes a distinction between samech al shulchan aviv and eno samech al shulchan aviv. We don't just look at the age of the minor, we look at who's feeding him. Is he supporting himself, or is he being supported by his father? Right? Okay, I think now we can jump into Rashi. Questions so far? Okay, let's do this last Rashi on the Amud. V'harei mitzia.
Ask this guy, we want to change a large amount of money for our son with a check. Could he do better? Could he do it at 1.5%?
I'm sorry, Alan. I didn't quite hear. Perhaps you can say it again.
That was Aaron speaking.
It was Aaron? Okay.
Aaron.
I have the wrong screen up. I can't see all the faces.
It's no face.
You'll be in 20 minutes.
Aaron, you need to speak louder, please.
That will be very nice. You get so upset. We have to work out the phone, and you get so upset. It's very distressing. Why are you being upset? We have one phone so far. There's probably 2 phones, so we don't know it. Nechama will help us, so please.
All right.
Relax.
Okay, should we move? Apologize, I didn't hear so clearly.
I have no idea.
Let's move on. Let's see Rashi. Let's see Rashi inside. All right.
I have no
V'harei
idea.
mitzia. Ditznan Mishnayim Ochsen. We just read this Mishnah. The Mishnah says in Shnayim Ochsen and Bava Metzia. Mitzias beno uvito aktanin. Harei elu shelo. However we define a katan, When a minor finds an object, they belong to him, namely to the father. The ukimna hasam, and we establish in that sugya in Bava Metzia, according to Rabbi Chia bar Abba, the godol v'samuch al shulchano zeu katan. Even a son over the age of bar mas mitzvah, if they are still dependent on the father's table, that is a katan for monetary purposes. And therefore, the Gemara wants to know here, how come if a found object would go to the father, payment for chavola, payment for injury, goes to the child? And the answer, the Gemara answer, just looking back at the chart, should still be up on the screen. Such a father, the Gemara's answer is that such a father who is not makpid and his children and he feeds them, such a father will not demand extra revenue. That came at the price of physical pain. Unlike an aveda, unlike a lost object, which didn't involve any pain, he just found a $20 bill on the street, that the father wants. But payment for injury, which came at the price of pain, he doesn't begrudge his children that payment. He'll let the child keep the payment for chavola. Okay, so now we've covered the Gemara, and I believe we covered the Rashis. Let's try a little Tosfos. In most of the Gemara, we've been discussing Sheves. Out of the 5 payments for injury, most of the discussion is centered about who gets the Sheves. That's the payment for lost wages. Perhaps it should be associated with who gets the paycheck itself. Let's see the top Tosfos on the Yamud. Tosfos Amalei. This was all the way on the top of the Yamud when we first brought in Rav. When we first brought in Rav, who said that the father does not get injury payments, it goes to the girl. And then later in the Gemara, we established that's talking about everything but Sheves. According to Rav, Sheves goes to the father. Everything else goes to the girl. All right, let's crack open the Tosfos. The top one. Amalei. Lo zichsa Torah la'av elo shevach neurim bilvad. Rav said, the only thing the father gets is shevach neurim. Let's define that as the paycheck or kiddushin money of his daughter, but not injury payments. First Tosfos says, L'simono be'almo nokat hay lishna. This expression is a mnemonic. It's a way to remember that the father gets his daughter's paycheck. Kiddi pirashti. We saw this last week on Thursday morning, I believe, in Tosfos back on Amud Aleph. The Tosfos learns that Binu Re'ah Beis Aviyah doesn't really tell us about monetary matters. Rather, it's from other sources. Other sources tell us that what monetary rights a father has in his daughter. Ve'afilu patsa b'faneha. Even if that third party injured the girl's face. Where did that come from? An injury on the face. That was all the way at the end of the Gemara. That's the Gemara we saw yesterday morning. Unlike Rabbi Yochanan, that the father is entitled to all injury payments, including payment for an injury to the face. At this point in the Gemara, we're discussing Rav. Rav and Reish Lakish hold that all payments go to the girl, not to the father. The Afrosami Kaspa, even an injury to the face, again, now we're at the end of the second line, beginning of the third line. An injury to the face that she diminishes in value, Kosava Rav, delays Leila Av Midi. Rav is of the opinion that the father gets nothing. V'chein Reish Lakish. At the bottom of the Amud, the Tosfos gives away the end of the sugya. Reish Lakish will hold the same way as Rav. Ulakamon, coming up, Rabbi Yochanan Polig, Rabbi Yochanan argues, if we're talking about a facial loss in value due to an injury to the face, Chavalosa shel av. then the injury payment belongs to the father. Let's summarize that with a chart. Let's find the right chart. One moment, please. I don't know what happens if you share 3 charts at the same time. I'm assuming it's possible. I just pulled up now the first chart that we made. The machlokes between Rav and Reish Lakish in the first column and Rabbi Yochanan in the second column. I'm looking at the first chart on the page. Nezek, Tsar, Ripuy, Sheves, and Boshes. At what point do Rav and Reish Lakish on the one side and Rabbi Yochanan on the second side argue? This first line, Nezek, and including in that category of Nezek, let's add facial injury, even be it just superficial, just a scar. According to Rav and Reish Lakish, it goes to the girl. According to Rabbi Yochanan, it goes to the father. And later in the Gomorrah, we discover that the fourth line of this chart, the line of Sheves, lost wages, is not a point of machlokes between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Because Abaye says, Moder Rav b'Sheves. Abaye says, and I crossed out the word girl over there by Sheves. Abaye says the Sheves goes to the father. And certainly Rabbi Yochanan holds that it goes to the father. Good so far?
Okay.
Once again, regarding the theory of the matter, what is a father entitled to monetarily? What rights does he have in his daughter? He gets her paycheck, and Sheves is associated with the paycheck. He also has the right to marry her off and to sell her as an Amar Ivriya, and loss in value is associated with the right to marry her off and the right to sell her as an Amar Ivriya. Those are the 2 payments we're talking about now. Who will it go to? To the father or to the girl? All right. We're now on the 4th line of Tosfos, the last wide line. Towards the end of the line, V'im Toma. Tosfos has a question. V'hechi pligi Rav v'Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. Why not? V'ha b'Reish Nara shenit patata. At the beginning of that parak in Kesuvos, Mashma b'Braisa, the Chavolo the Patza b'Faneha have Yola'av. We appear to have an explicit Braisa, which the Amoraim cannot argue on, that payment for a facial injury goes to the father. Now we have a problem. The only one of these 5 payments where we set up a machlokes, Rav and Reish Lakish against Rabbi Yochanan, is that of Nezek, which includes facial injury. And Rav and Reish Lakish says it goes to the girl. How are they going to answer this brisa in Ksuvos that says a facial injury goes to the father? V'yesh lomar.
If the girl is,
Yes.
you say if the girl is not dependent on her father, but that doesn't, she's always dependent on the father until she's married. Okay.
If she's married, so she's left her father's rishos. I think the whole sugya must be talking about a case when she is not married, right? If you want to know who gets the payments for injury to a married woman, so then we have to look at Meseches Ksuvos. It probably would fall into the Nichsei Milug fund, and they'll buy something that produces profits. The principal will belong to the wife, and the payroll, the profits can be used by the husband. But again, here we're talking about an unmarried girl. But I sidestepped your question. Let's say she's not, let's say she's not dependent on her father's table. We were only forced into this distinction according to Rav. Rabbi Yochanan wouldn't have to make such a distinction since he said it all goes to the father. I have to think about it. It could be Tosfos. We'll talk about it later on. And I don't think that I'm not sure that Rabbi Yochanan would be forced into the same distinction between the 2 braisos that Rav had to come up with. All right, that would be a valid answer. I have to think about it. Tosfos has another answer. V'yesh lomar, the hosam mari v'fechisas kesef she'ad yemei bagros she'teitze merishus ha'av. There are two ways of looking at a loss in value. You know, a girl. How do we normally evaluate sheves? We evaluate, in theory, if a person would be put on the slave market, how much money could he fetch? So if a girl has a scar on her face, Rahman al-Litzlan, so then her value goes down. But there's a difference. We know a father has the right to sell his daughter as an Amar Ivriya. But an Amar Ivriya is by definition a minor. The moment she becomes a Nara, she goes free. So the difference in price between an Amar Ivriya, you know, let's say she's 11 and a half. She has half a year. Afterwards, she'll go free. The difference in price between an Amar Ivriya with a scar and an Amar Ivriya without a scar for 1.5 year work, or 1 year or 2 years, is a very minor difference. But had we been talking about an adult, and we're talking about full value, you know, what would be the value of a person on the slave market to be a slave forever and ever with a scar and without a scar? That's a very major difference. So Tosfos says, let's not get confused. When the Brisa that's in Ksuvos says that the father is the one entitled to payment for a facial injury, that's only the amount that she would get from now until she becomes a Nara, until she leaves her father's rishos. Tosfos says, Adime Bagros, Shetese Mushus Ha'av. The father, although the father cannot sell his daughter until the time of Bagros is 12 and a half, he can marry her off. And he would fetch less money for Kiddushin, for, you know, because if a girl has a scar, than if she doesn't. Shahaisa, back into Tosfos, we're still in the middle of the sentence. Shahaisa nifchasa davar muat im haya rotze lemochra also im haya rotze lemochra kama also davar muat kuli alma modu de la av havya. That small difference, you know, for the amount of time from now until she becomes a gadol, that small difference in time in price for that time, everybody agrees belongs to the father, even Rav and Reish Lakish. Dehainu shabach neurim gemurim. That is absolute shabach neurim. That is profits that come from the maiden years, the neurim years. You know, it's the right of the father to marry off his daughter or to sell her as an Amar Ivriya, and that loss of value belongs to the father. That's that Gemara in Ksuvos. The Hocha, however, Nechlaku, if you lost a place, I'm about 9 lines from the end of the Tosfos. First word on the line is Nechlaku. Hocha Nechlaku, where do Rav and Rabbi Yochanan disagree regarding who gets injury payments? Nechlaku b'chol ha'pechisa, all of the lessening in value. Shehi nefcheses kol yameha. She is lowered in value for the entire rest of her days, the rest of her life. Through this injury. Even after the days of being a Nara finish. This virale Rav ulu Reish Lakish did have it. Rav and Reish Lakish hold that the payment belongs to her. After all, she's no longer in her father's rishos. Rabbi Yochanan Savar, the whole V'ira Pechiza Zo B'Na'arusa, since the damage happened when she was still a Nara, at the time of the injury, she was a minor. Tehei Kula La'av, the entire loss of value belongs to the father. Not the loss in value for the next few months until she becomes 12 and a half, but her permanent loss of value, it all belongs to the father. Okay, what have we accomplished? We've pinpointed the exact point of machlokas between Rav Reish Lakish against Rabbi Yochanan. We're talking specifically about nezek, including facial injuries. But they're only arguing, according to Tosfos, about the permanent loss of value. Temporary, her temporary loss of value, he can sell her on the Amar Ha'ivriya market for less amount now, that certainly belongs to the father. Good so far? One other answer in
I'm a bit
Tosfos.
confused about this idea of the temporary and the permanent.
Okay, so let's say a story. Let's give it a story. A girl is 11 and a half years old, and somebody injures her, and now there's a permanent scar on her face. Now, how do we evaluate how much nezek to pay? So we evaluate how much a person would be worth on the slave market. There are two markets. A Jewish girl can only be sold when she's a minor. And she goes free the moment she reaches the age of a Nara, 12 years old.
I thought
So-
the Nara was older than that. I thought that was a Bulgaris.
Technically, a Nara is shtei saros, 2 hairs. But for the sake of the math, let's assume it's 12 years old.
Okay,
A Nara is 12 years old, and then 6 months after that, at 12 and a half, approximately, she becomes a Bulgaris.
I see.
And for Kiddushin, the father can accept Kiddushin for his daughter until 12 and a half, and he keeps her paycheck until 12 and a half.
Okay.
So let's say he would walk into the Amar Ha'ivriya market at 11 and a half. Who wants to buy an Amar Ha'ivriya for approximately the next half a year? But you know she has a scar on her face. So let's say she'll sell for $100 less. You know, an Amar Ha'ivriya for half a year with a scar, and an Amar Ha'ivriya for half a year without a scar. So now $100, the person, because of that, the person who injured this girl must pay $100 to the father. He caused a nezek of $100 in terms of the right to sell her as an Amar Ha'ivriya until she becomes a Gedola. But that scar won't just last 6 months. That scar will last the rest of her life. How do we usually evaluate nezek for an adult? We look at the Eved Kanani slave market, slave for life. Who wants to buy an Eved Kanani? How much would you buy an Eved Kanani for who's healthy, and how much would you buy an Eved Kanani for with a scar on the face? Right, that's a lesser value, right? I don't want the person serving my wine to have a scar on his face. I can't look at him. You know, that's not just $100 difference. That might be a $10,000 difference, right? So that $10,000, that nezek must be paid to the girl.
I see. So the temporary is the value as an Eved Ivri, and the permanent is the value as an Eved Kanani.
Right, and both must be paid. These are two aspects of the loss in value that the person who caused the injury caused. Right, maybe it's 10,000 minus 100. You know, the first 100 will go to the father, and the other 10,000, you know, or 9,900, according to, let me correct myself, according to Rav and Reish Lakish, it will go to the girl. According to Rabbi Yochanan, that loss of value on the permanent slave market, that's $10,000 payment. According to Rabbi Yochanan, that too will go to the father.
I get
Because
it.
at the time she was a minor. Just like if he marries her off, he collects the entire Kiddushin money. You know, if she brings home the paycheck, he collects the entire paycheck. So if she brings home this injury payment, so according to Rabbi Yochanan, he collects the entire nezek. Okay, that's answer number 1. All right, now we have an inami, an alternative answer in Tosfos. Again, the problem is here on our daf we have a machlokas, Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, who gets the nezek payment. Whereas in Kesuvos it says that the father gets the nezek payment. How can we resolve that? 4 lines from the end of the Tosfos. Aleph Nun stands for inami. Hacha, on our daf, V'ma shehi nefchesas l'kiddushin. What is the nezek we're talking about? Not the loss in value as an Amar Ivriya, which is how we normally evaluate nezek, but the loss in value in kiddushin. A potential suitor would pay less money to the father to marry a girl who has a scar. That difference, who should pay it? That's Aradaf. That's the point of Machlokas. That's where Rab says it goes to the girl, and Rabbi Yochanan says it goes to the father. Continuing Tosfos, the Svira Lahu, L'Rav U'Lereish Lakish, the Lo Zachi Le Ele Kiddushin Mamish. When the Torah gives the right to the Kiddushin money to the father, that's only the actual ring, right? The father keeps the ring, the actual Kiddushin money, or whatever money the husband pays him to have the right to do so, but not payment in lieu of Kiddushin money, right? That he doesn't get. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan says no. Rabbi Yochanan will say that he will also get that aspect of nezek, because it falls into the category of Shevach Neurim of Kiddushin. V'hosam, whereas over there in Kesuvos, which says that the father gets the payment for a Petzia B'fonea, a facial injury, Behefsed Ma'aseh Yodeha, listen closely, this is the loss in the paycheck itself, in the handiwork itself, to lo timsa lo konim, rather. She will not find buyers. Let's say it's a salary. In the past, she could hire herself out and perform work and bring home a paycheck. Now with the scar on her face, people might be less likely to hire her. Let's say she sold goods in the marketplace, that, she produced goods at home, she knitted sweaters and she sells her sweaters in the marketplace and the proceeds go to the father. But now in the marketplace, people will pass her by. They don't want to stop and look at her. Nobody will buy. That's the loss, which everybody agrees goes to the father. It's loss in income itself. A second way of resolving this stiro. Okay, gentlemen, let's take a look at the chart. This is, which chart? One of the documents I brought up, hope you can see it, is in the file Hachovel Tzamanavshi 2. And the second page, the chart is titled Tosfos DH Aleph Lamed, Amar Le. Let me know, can you see this chart on your screen or should I share it again?
I printed it out, so I can see it.
Okay.
Because I have
Very
it.
good.
This is the second chart.
Right. The name of the file is Tzamanavshi 2, and the second page, Tosfos Diva Maskal Amar Le. Let's analyze the charts. The first column says nezek. We're talking about nezek, or a face injury. The chiddush is that a facial injury is like a broken arm. It's as if it's debilitating. It causes a loss in value. Under that, the Gomorrah in Ksubot says this money is paid to the father, whereas the Gomorrah here in Bava Kama says it's a machlokas. Rav and Reish Lakish say it goes to the girl, and Rabbi Yochanan says paid to the father. How do we resolve this? Column 1, Tosfos answer 1 says the Gemara in Ksubos that says paid to the father is for the decrease in value for sale until the age of being a nara. The next few months until she becomes a nara, how much less is she worth? That loss of money must be compensated to the father. Whereas her permanent decrease in value, just like any other Jew would be paid for nezek in case of injury, that's the machlokas. Where Rav and Reish Lakish say it's to the girl, and Rabbi Yochanan said it's paid to the father. According to the second answer of Tosfos, what is certainly paid to the father? Decrease in earnings. There are no buyers. This direct loss of income, that's what must be paid to the father. But the decrease in value for kiddushin, that's where we have a machlokas. What about injury? According to the second answer, meaning what does the second answer say about the case of the first answer? That's a good question. I don't have that clear. We have two different. This is a chart. The chart doesn't quite illustrate what the answer number 2 will say about answer number 1, or answer number 1 about answer number 2. But this is an illustration of the 2 answers in total. Okay.
So how are you going to assess the decrease?
Decrease
You have to go by
for
of earnings.
the decrease for what?
Of earnings.
As my I'm losing reception here. 1 moment. Okay, now I see. The Basin has a way of evaluating Nezek, Sari, Shevis, and Boshes. They'll have to evaluate market conditions, and maybe they'll do an experiment. They'll see how much did she sell in a day before the injury, and how much can she sell in the day after the injury. Multiply that by as long as the injury will last. That could really add up, but
Okay.
they'll find a way to evaluate it.
Yeah.
Basin knows how to work with money.
Okay.
Okay, let's see if we have time for another Tosfos. Let's take a look at Tosfos Vikatoni. This is the second Tosfos from the bottom. We're not going to have time to go through all of it, but it will allow us to zoom in a little bit in our analysis of the charts in terms of which payments we're talking about in which part of the Gemara. Everybody see it? Tosfos Vikatoni?
Yeah.
Vikatoni. Below ode, Elo acherim shechavlu ba chayovin litain le'aviyah. This is the second brisa. 1 moment. We should verify that. No, the question is regarding the first brisa. The point of the Gemara this is coming in is about 8 lines from the bottom. In the first brisa, where she does endure pain, and the payment umei alma ka'asila, and the payment comes from a third party. Vika kapid. And therefore the father we would expect the father to be makbid and want the payment for himself. And it says, V'lo od ela achim shechav l'ba chayavin litin le'aviyah. When a third party injures her, he must pay the father. Again, in Brisa 1. Brisa 1, right, injured by a third party, pays to the father. Whereas in Brisa 2, it goes to the child. So Tosfos asks, maybe there's no question. The im tomer, my kusha, ha'ukma kamaisa b'sheves. Earlier in the Gemara, we determined that out of the 5 payments for injury, which one are we talking about in that brisa? We're talking about sheves. What payment goes to the father? Specifically for lost wages. Uvas raisa, whereas the second brisa, dikatoni v'vinosav shel acherim kitanim yaseh lehem sgula, that if a third party injures the minor daughter of somebody else, they make a trust fund, meaning they pay the daughter. Dilma Mari b'shar dvarim could go nezek v'tzar. Let's head off the contradiction at the pass. Maybe it's not talking about sheves. Maybe it's talking about the other payments. What payments should go to the girl? Nezek, damages. Again, we're now discussing within Rav, who says, in essence, all the payments should go to the girl. And Sa'ar, pain, even Rabbi Yochanan didn't talk about going to the father, right? That for sure should go to the girl. So maybe there's no contradiction at all. The Yesh Lomar, the mistama have a dumya d'zecharim. That avenue, that answer is not at our disposal, because mistama probably, when we talk about the girls, have a dumya d'zecharim. It's parallel to the boys. And when we say regarding the boys, picking up in Tosfos, the yaseh lehem sgula, we should make a trust fund for them. Did who marry their payments deals with the case afilu b'shabbos she'ein ma'aseh yadeim la'av. And regarding the boys, the father never gets a paycheck. If he never gets the paycheck, so for sure he doesn't get the Shabbos. When injuring a son, a minor son, there's no difference between these 5 payments. And when we say pay to trust, and all 5 payments, Nezek, Sar, Ripu, Shabbos, and Bolshas, should all go to the trust fund. Right? So if in regards to the sons, we're talking about Shabbos as well, then in regards to daughters, we're also talking about Shabbos as well. Take a look on the chart. If you take a look on the chart in Brisa number 2, so we put this point in. Brisa number 2 on the second line, injured by third party. 4th box, when it says minor daughter pay to trust, Tosfos DH Divra Maskal Vikatoni, our Tosfos, says that even Shabbos should go to the trust. And again, why? Because we say, even though the father normally gets her wages, but this Shabbos payment came at the price of physical pain. Again, it's not the payment for the pain itself. That's tsar. We're talking about the payment for the Shabbos, the payment for the lost work. But because it came about through physical pain, the father cedes that. He gives that over to his daughter. All right. One more possibility to close out. The old nuchal lefarish. The hodik atani bevono b'vnosav potter. When that second brisa says that if a father injures his own son or daughter, he is exempt. That would be the first line of that second brisa. Hainu davka b'Shabbos. You might have thought it's talking about all 5 payments. No, the entire second brisa is talking specifically about Shabbos. Usvarahu. The leislon lemifterei mishum desmuchim al shulchano ela mishabbos v'lo mishar dvarim. This is logical. The only thing we should exempt him for, because they are sitting at his table, remember the second brisa is when they're sitting at his table, is Shabbos. Should we exempt him from embarrassment? What does that have to do with the fact that they're at his table? Should we exempt him from paying for the physical pain that he caused them? What does it have to do with the fact that he's paying for their food? It's only Shabbos, assuming the paycheck eats food, means food. It's only Shabbos that he should be exempt from for this reason. In all contexts, Ma'aseh yadel la'av tachas mizonos. Ma'aseh yadayim is always the reciprocal payment for food. The Tosfos goes on to say, if you look at Kesuvos, when we say that a husband has the right to his wife's paycheck, that's because he feeds her. Right? So too here. The reciprocal payment for feeding one's children is the right to their paycheck, and only the right to their paycheck. And the only one of the 5 injury payments that has to do with that is Shabbos. So I indicated that on the chart also in Brisa number 2. Right? When we say that if injured by the father is exempt. When dependent upon the father's table, Tosfos limits it to Shabbos only. Again, what does that mean? All the other payments of injury, tsar and ripui and Shabbos, that the father would have to pay. What do you say, gentlemen? Do you want to go on, or it could be we're out of time for today? We sort of left in the middle of Tosfos, but I think we saw the main point.
Yeah, we are out of time. I want to thank you so much for all the work you put into these charts.
Yeah, I'm gonna print them
You're
out.
very welcome. It was a pleasure. I hadn't seen this parak in a while, and it was certainly an enjoyable refresher and enjoyable to learn with all of you. and wish you all continued hatzlacha.
Amen. Same
And
to
you
you.
too.
Amen.
Be well.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
all the best.
All right, take care. We'll stay here for Rabbi Moore.
All right, so I'm leaving. But be well, everybody. See you tomorrow, Matt.
Okay, see you tomorrow, Roy.
And I hope my connection is a bit more stable.
Yeah. Alan, are you leaving also?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna exit out and start again then, so
4 o'clock?
yeah, 4 o'clock
Yeah.
today in session, but 5:04.
Yeah. Everything go well yesterday?
Yeah, we had a very good meeting. It's very complicated to do a will when you have assets here and assets in America and you want to make it halachic. It's wow, it's extremely complicated. So we spent several hours with her just explaining to us many of the technicalities of the halachic perspective and the secular perspective.
Right.
So it was very productive. We're going again on the 9th.
Yeah. See you later.
Okay, take care.